Hi, everyone. This is Lee Perry, the Chief Operations Officer of Ideas for Us. I personally am very into water projects. As you know, Ideas for Us focuses on eco-action projects in energy, water, food, waste, and ecology. But living here in Orlando, Florida, I realized that we have a huge water crisis on our hands. There's so many things that are detrimental to our natural springs and major water bodies all throughout the state. And so today I am welcoming my friend, Zach Marimon, who is the owner and president of Agrarian Land and Pond. And this is a service that provides pond, lake, and wetland management in Central Florida. So Zach, go ahead and talk a little bit about your organization.
Hey Lee, thank you for having me today. I also want to thank you just for hosting these podcasts, because I know you guys keep finding more and more avenues to connect to the world, and this is just a really nice one and really perfect for the time that we're in at the moment. So thanks for putting these on. I'm honored to be here for this. So as you said, my name is Zachary Marimon. I'm the owner, operator, and founder of Agrarian Land and Pond. We are a small business here in Central Florida. Started back in 2010, and it actually started as an idea that I had when Ideas was just a fledgling collegiate group at the University of Central Florida. So I was able to take this and turn it into an actual successful business. Basically what the kind of work we do is in lakes, ponds, and wetlands. We provide ecological services such as taking out and identifying nuisance and invasive plants, planting in the ones that belong there, the native plants we want to see, and a lot of other technological aspects of maintaining the pond. So anything to do with freshwater systems, I can basically help out with. So what I'd like to do today, though, is I've got a couple of things on the list here. I wanted to start by just kind of going over how I even got started in this and where this idea even came from. So basically when Ideas was just starting out and it was just at UCF, we were just going around picking up trash. We had these action events that were basically networking events as well. And we would go around picking up trash from the beach, from forests, from around the lake. And during that time, you get to talk to other people, like-minded and maybe not, but just to express your ideas and talk about ideas for environmental solutions. So my idea ended up spawning from this. I ended up becoming the coordinator for the Ecosystem Facilitation events. And it's a little bit of a mouthful, but I'll explain that in just a little bit. But what we started doing was, I recognized that we had an issue with the management of these retention ponds, these stormwater retention ponds. So first we got in there and we started cleaning them up. We were removing the algae, trying to get the algae out because the algae had absorbed some nutrients that came off of the landscape, and the algae was growing and it made it an eyesore as well as potentially dangerous. So we wanted to prevent that from getting to the dangerous area. We started cleaning it up and we started introducing the native plants that you would normally find. And what we found was that we were able to take something that was kind of a pit, an eyesore, and we turned it into something beautiful. So just to give that a little bit of background on how these work, or what a stormwater pond is, it starts off with, whenever we develop something, we have to account for the water that will drain from the property that we developed on. And it can contain all sorts of different pollution, including nutrients from landscape fertilizers, which then can promote algae blooms. So when they use these systems, which for decades, and even still now, are used preferentially for flood control mostly, but also for pollution abatement from development. And they kind of dig these holes in the ground, and they do work really well if they're maintained properly, but the system doesn't reflect the natural lake ecosystems that they're designed to mimic. So it doesn't really seem to make sense, or at least it didn't in our minds, and that's what kind of got us to this point. But we took a pond that was just bare, we started cleaning it up, and we got something just beautiful out of it. You can see that on the other side there, and it was just so amazing. But that was just the start, of course. even to get into this, like, what does it matter? Why? You know, like, you could put plants in the water and that'd be great. We all want to see some plants, but what does it really matter? For me, it started when I witnessed basically improper maintenance. I saw the current contractor we had in a condo community I was living in. They were treating the algae and it would come back within a week. They would treat the algae, would come back, treat it, come back. One day I came home and there were a bunch of dead fish in the pond. I have no idea why. The contractors doing the job didn't seem like it made sense until I learned so much more about how this worked. I realized that the way things were going on around me wasn't something that I was willing to live with. So this business became something that I was wanting to live for. It is so important that we consider the way we develop and what we use in our development when it pertains to how it affects the overall environment, right? So when you have a lot of development going on and you break up habitats, you leave the animals without a place to go. So if we just take these ponds and we don't even treat them like they're natural systems, it's not going to matter to the wildlife that we're missing a home that was once there. They're still going to come. So this problem, you know, it's bigger than just us. It's everything. Water is everything. Water is everything for everybody, whether you be a plant, animal, or a person. It connects us all. So this work isn't just about you know, making something pretty. That's just a side benefit. This is about so much more, the connectivity of us all through water resources. The industry is not new. Aquatic plant management is probably close to 100 years old now. But any changes seem to be just kind of limited. It seems like there hasn't been much of an advancement in how we build or how we maintain these systems. But there are a couple of things that I think I'd like to point out right now, either some issues and then some ways that I think everybody can help. First, an issue I see in the industry is responsibility. I see that you have sometimes a bunch of people living around a lake, and the people that live on the lake may have to pay to maintain that lake, to keep it clean, to whatever the situation might be. If they're doing that, but somebody across the street from one of those lakefront homeowners also contributes pollution to that lake, how come that other person isn't responsible for paying? It seems like an easy concept. It seems like everybody would have to pay. Wouldn't that make sense? If you contribute pollution to a lake, that you all pay. But I'm not seeing that. I'm seeing over and over. Now it's more older developments. It's not usually like apartment complexes, usually something like that, small and contained. They're usually subdivisions, single family homes, where I'm seeing this. And I just don't get it. That's something I really wish regulations would start to, or we could get some government regulations to focus on. But if you do want to bring attention to this, so it's not just me talking, there is ways that everybody else can contribute. And that's if you can join either a Friends of organization, which is basically a special interest group that will then allow people to give a voice to a water body. For example, the Friends of the Wekiva River. So these are nonprofit organizations that essentially bring together all stakeholders. As I said earlier, everybody's a stakeholder. Everybody uses water. And it allows you to then give your inputs. This is super important for large lakes, but it's also important in an apartment complex or in a condo community or some other neighborhood with a homeowners association where they might not have, say, a lake committee. So this is another way you can get involved. Start a lake committee if there isn't one already. And you can bring in the people from the community that have opinions or thoughts or just bring in, you know, the general, you know, everybody that matters or that has a say in the matters that go on in your neighborhood. Now, the policies that I think that we need to approve on not only include the responsibility, but the ultimate guidance that we give in the permitting. So right now it's kind of a mixed bag. Sometimes you have a pond that was permitted with plants, sometimes you don't. Sometimes you have ordinances that require literally no plants in the city. You cannot have any plants in the pond. And the rationale for this is if the pond were to be filled up with plants or sediments, but plants, specifically cattail. Cattail is one of the known problematic plants that will just completely fill up a pond, and then you'll have to pay a lot of money, a lot more than it costs to just maintain the pond, to have the material removed. And that's all just so you can protect the flood control capacity. You need to be able to hold a certain amount of water in these ponds. And that's the main priority when it comes to how we manage these systems. I would like to see more enforcement of the plantings. Like I would like to see that when it is permitted, I would like to see that these are enforced. And I'd like to see maybe some work to review some of these permits. And if they didn't have plants, maybe we can start putting plants. Just have some coordinated effort in how they're managed. Just remember that no matter what, everybody's got to agree on it. If you don't have an agreement between anybody who is a stakeholder, you can end up with some plan that you had just going awry. So you could have somebody wanting to put plants in the pond. They go put the plants in the pond, but somebody doesn't like the plants. Then now they may go pull them out, and it's been all for naught. True sustainability requires that everybody get involved and come up with a plan together. So I would definitely like to see that coordination in lake committees and friends of organizations. Some other issues though that come up with that. You have a resistance when certain people are afraid of things. Like they might be afraid of snakes. They might think, well, if we have a lot of vegetation, we're going to end up with some snakes we don't like. This is where education comes into play. There's a lot of good snakes out there, a lot of snakes that are helpful in keeping some other nuisance animals in check. There's also fears of the maintenance aspect of it, right? Like if you have a bunch of plants around and then vines just grow all over everything, it's just a mess and nobody's going to like it. And if nobody likes the way it looks, it's not going to stay. So no matter what you do whenever some kind of plan is implemented, the maintenance aspect of it must be considered. You must have a plan for maintaining whatever changes you make. Another question I get a lot is, what are the best plants? What's the best one? I'd rather hear what are the best plants. I'd rather hear which grouping is the best than I would which one is the best, because there is no good solution in just planting one plant. Studies have shown that pollution removal is improved better than having one single plant alone. So just they did studies with just single plants and then put them together and have seen that you had a better pollution removal when they were mixed. So already we know that that's good, but there's other reasons as well. As you don't want to just use one plant. For example, if there's a disease that were to come across and it would kill just a monoculture of one single type of plant, so that's not going to be helpful. It's definitely the best method is to do a mixed planting. But it gets even more complicated than that, right? So just like on Earth, we have different ecotypes everywhere. You have deserts, you have prairies, you have forests. Well, in a lake, these sections actually come from the dry land going into the water. So if you look on the slide here, you start off with the vegetation on land. So we call that the riparian area. So those can be trees, it can be a mixture of trees and smaller shrubs and other grasses, tall grasses that kind of start on, that are usually more drought tolerant as well as flood tolerant, because conditions on that part of a lake, they're complicated. As you go into the pond, this is the transition area. So you're going to have a variety of smaller plants right around the edge of the pond. And this is generally considered the most biologically active area of the pond as well. As you go a little deeper, you're going to find some taller plants. They grow about 4 or 5 feet tall. These are the plants that are going to be half submerged in the water. So over in the image here, you see some of these plants over here. Then you go deeper. You've got your submerged plants, and sometimes you even have floating plants. So wide variety out here. It's important to have different plants in these different locations because they do serve different functions. I did mention it earlier. I want to say it again. I don't recommend cattail. Over and over, cattails take up a pond. They completely take it up. Small ponds anyway, not large lakes or anything, but a small pond can be taken up, as well as a cattail will grow over several different of these areas. So a cattail can go all the way up on the land, and it can go all the way down to the deep part. That is a lot of different plants that are going to be that will not have a location to grow. The tall cattails will shade them all out. It does go against my method of what I was suggesting earlier, how you get better pollution removal with multiple species, but also cattails just have a low wildlife value in terms of habitat. They really only support about 3 different bird species. There's just not a lot out of it. So I'm not going to go into every plant, but I just want to make sure we cover that one. But there are others. That I would recommend if you go to the University of Florida's, I got the website down there at the bottom of the screen. So it's plants.ifas.ufl.edu. You can find a list of native and non-native aquatic plants. It's a really, really good source. So, but here I have a couple of examples. So I've got some of these are more dry, more on the land area. And these include the golden canna and the blue flag iris. Now I wanted to showcase these two for an important reason. Each one of them is better at a different time of year. So the canna is not going to do so good in the winter. The iris will, and vice versa. That's important. It's going to look better. You're going to have plants still growing in the different seasons. This is a good mix. So I'm not going to give you every plant, but this is a great mix to have. Now, as you go deeper, some more that we like to mix, if we will be the pickerel weed and the thalia, or firefly, sometimes it's also called. These are really tall plants. The firefly specifically, you see that image right there with the person standing next to that firefly. You plant this thing on land, it's not going to look as good. So your aesthetics would be messed up. People aren't going to like it. Again, it comes into the truly sustainable approach of making sure it looks good and is accepted, as well as functions for what your needs are. But that's just a recommendation. There's a wide variety more that you can get into. But that pretty much wraps up kind of the items I wanted to go over with you today. I do want to thank you all for watching this presentation. We do offer services here in Orlando and in the greater Central Florida area. So feel free to check out our website and give us a call if you have any issues or any needs for your stormwater ponds or lakes or wetlands.
I do have one question. Thank you so much for this presentation. It was literally perfect. I'm curious if you could think in the hypothetical with all the water quality issues that we have right now. Do you think it's possible, if we utilize this form of multimodal control of offsetting our pollution and all of the nitrogen that's in our waterways and et cetera, if we use this method across all the ponds and all the retention ponds and all the water bodies in Florida, do you think it could completely alter the water quality issues that we're having at this time?
Oh, wow. Yeah. So when you're using, I think that the system you're referring to incorporates the variety of animals, plants, and that are all involved in cleaning the water. Mm-hmm. I absolutely think they're going to make a big impact. Mm-hmm. I didn't get into much detail in it earlier in the screen, but the method that we employed was ecosystem facilitation. So that's just promoting the natural mechanisms of a pond that you would normally find. So I don't know that you're going to get it all, because it's not so simple. Like, let's just say you have incoming nutrient pollution it's at 100%, but it's not combined. It's not all dissolved in the water. Some of it is organic, some of it's dissolved. So there's transitions that have to happen. And the transitions are usually done by microorganisms and some macro. So you have your large organisms and your smaller ones, little bacteria, as well as worms and snails that are going to break down organic matter. The problem is retention time. That's something that was looked into, is increasing the amount of time that the water stays in the pond so that the biology can have the effect that we want to remove nutrient pollution. Unfortunately, just plants alone would definitely not do it. I participated in some of the first academic studies here in Florida on floating treatment islands or wetlands, which are just floating platforms with vegetation we were using to try to absorb the nutrient pollution. But we only got about 10% out of the incoming nutrients. That still left 90% that could go anywhere. Now, it could go in the soil, it could stay in the water, or it could flush out. That I don't think you're gonna, I think assuming getting to the 100% with just what we do in the pond, it may not be enough. I think there will need to be more done for pre-treatment. So what's coming into the pond may need more pre-treatment, and that could be the way that we design the landscapes before that water comes in. I think that would make a big enhancement. I don't know about 100%, but I think we could get a lot further than we are right now by incorporating the actual ecological methods that actually happen in these ponds, the things that we dedicate, or that we not dedicate, but that we allocate, I guess. It's not the word either.
I guess what I want to know too is the fact that, you know, it sounds like what you're trying to say is that before we even consider utilizing these ecological treatments on our water bodies, what we really need to do is stop people from utilizing fertilizers and pesticides on their lawns, get frequent septic tank checks to make sure that there's no leaking that's taking place, that's going into our water bodies, and basically any runoff pollution from any roadways all need to be taken into consideration so that we can hold these water bodies that are especially permitted with having plantings mandated within their zone, that we need to hold them accountable and make sure that there actually is accountability for the proper management of these water bodies.
Absolutely. You said it. You said it right there. Because it's once that stuff gets in the pond, there may not be enough time for the ecological methods to clean it all. So especially if you got a lot of rain coming in, it's gonna push out that first layer. So time is important. Timing is important. Just improving the ecological aspects plus improving the retention time. I think we might have it.
That's perfect. Well, that's it. And I'm so grateful.
Thank you.
So grateful.
No, I'm glad to be here. I really am. Appreciate this.
Yay.